It's 1970, and Carolyn and I are living in Holland, working with a small group of smugglers led by a man named Brother Andrew. Brother Andrew is known for his faith and outlandish adventures. One time actually smuggling over 1 million Bibles in one load into China. But this was earlier than that. He was challenging a bunch of us young guys and saying, you know, if we take suitcases of Bibles in and we pray and God blinds our eyes, why can't we just take a truck, load it with Bibles, pray, and then drive it across the border? Well, he said that with a twinkle in his eye, and we knew what he was doing. He was challenging us, which he may have wanted to do, but I don't think he ever did. But anyway, we took on that challenge, and I approached a friend of mine, Lane, who was working on our team, and said, "Hey, let's do that. Let's create a vehicle where we could take twice as many Bibles as we've taken before." And some of my old tricks from my youth took over. That's when the hot rod days, when we used to take cars and strip all the chrome, all the door handles off, and you would kind of tap underneath with your toe, and the door would magically open. And this is what we did with our cars. So I thought, you know, why can't we apply that to a car that we could build for this? The other thing was that in the old hippie days, one of the things that people did was they converted vans into homes. So you'd have a van and you'd put a couch in it, and some were pretty fancy. And actually my younger brother gave us an old van that he had, and I did that. I converted it into a very nice little traveling home for us, which we used quite efficiently for a while. So we began this project, and we worked on it and got this vehicle that actually took twice as many Bibles as we'd ever taken before. So for our maiden trip, we thought, where could we go? And we prayed and felt Hungary was the country we should go to. And so we loaded it up with Bibles. But before this, before we left, actually, we got this phone call from an elderly Dutch woman. She was a missionary, and she had just come back from Hungary. And I don't think she knew we were going there. But she just called and said that she'd come back from Hungary and had visited a very poor family there. And this family had a number of kids, and one of them wanted a bicycle so badly. And she knew obviously they couldn't afford that. And so she told this boy, she said, you know what, I'm going to send you a bicycle. And so she came back to Holland, found an old bike, an old Dutch bicycle, and she had it fixed up and painted, repainted, and so she told us, she said, I need to get this bicycle to Hungary somehow. Could you take it for me? Well, we talked it among ourselves, and Lane, as well as my other friends, said, you know, Al, forget it. You know, just we're taking the biggest load of Bibles we've taken, and you're gonna, you know, bother with a bicycle? And so they said, don't do it. Just tell her no. Well, she called again, and fortunately or unfortunately, I took the call. And I shouldn't have been the one to answer that, because she, again, shared her story, and this poor boy. And so here I was, okay, we'll take the bicycle for you. So here we ended up then driving to Hungary. Lane took his family, his wife and 2 kids at that time that he had, and they took this van, converted into a quite comfortable mobile home type situation. And Carol and I, we took our small car, and because we knew we weren't going to be able to drive this van into driveways to deliver Bibles, and so we would deliver the Bibles in our car. So they made it across the border with no problem, being a family with kids, and the car was really, the vehicle was made for that purpose, and it passed its first test. So here we were in Hungary, and first place we had to deliver Bibles was a very difficult place to find. It was on the outskirts of Budapest, little town, and we knew that it was going to be hard, and so Lane knew this pastor in Budapest that knew this place where we were to go to, and we went to him, and he decided to go with us rather than just tell us, because he said it's going to be very hard for you to find. So I'll go with you. And so earlier we had already loaded our car, our smaller car, with Bibles, and what we did was we took everything out, including the spare tire. I mean, so the whole trunk was full of, we'd taken the Bibles out of the big vehicle, put them in large plastic bags, the big black garbage bags, and we just filled those up, and so we filled our whole trunk with these big black bags. And then we filled the back seat and just left a little bit of space for the pastor to sit there and look above my head so he could give us directions. Carolyn was sitting in the front seat beside me. We loaded Bibles around her feet and then on her lap. So this car, you couldn't fit an ant crawling around there. It was so full of Bibles. And so the pastor told us where to go. It was late at night. We're driving down these through this small town, and more of a village, and all the homes looked alike. Some of the most of them had a little picket fence, so it was hard to distinguish one home from another. But he said, "Okay, stop here. We're here." And so he instructed us. He said, "Okay, now you take these Bibles and put them in front of the gate, and then when you have them all there, then let the people know you're there, and then help them with the Bibles to get the Bibles inside. In the meantime, I'm going to go up the street and wait for you. I don't want them to see that I'm here." They had a whole thing worked out that if ever something happened, everybody wouldn't be implicated. So the less people who knew what was going on, the better. So he said, "I'll wait for you, and when you're finished, come pick me up." So he went up the street, and so Carolyn and I are pulling these bags out of the car and putting them in front of the gate. And at one point, the gate slammed shut, and we saw a light go on inside the house. And so we stood there for a minute, and the people came out. And they're both in their pajamas and looking to see what's going on. And they see this big pile of these black bags, and they're thinking, "What's happening?" And so I quickly went and took one of the Bibles and gave it to them, showed it to them, and tried to explain, but they only spoke Hungarian, which we did not speak. And Hungarian is not a Slavic language, so you can't really understand not a word of it. And they didn't speak German, they didn't speak English, they didn't speak any language that we could communicate with. All we could do was give them these Bibles. They quickly helped them to get them inside the house. And they're looking around, and you could tell they've just got so many questions, but we can't answer any of them. And so we finally hugged them. They hugged us and went back inside. We drove away, picked up the pastor, went back to Budapest, dropped him off, and then continued our journey. After a few days, we came back to Budapest, or driving through Budapest, and we thought, well, let's just say hi to our friend, the pastor. So we knocked on his door, and he came out, and he's laughing. He said, "Well, what's so funny?" He said, "Well," he says, "the next day these people came and came to church, They said, Pastor, guess what? I said, what? Some angels visited us last night. What? What do you mean, angels? He said, well, you know where we live. I mean, it's out in the, so difficult to find. You couldn't drive to it, but these people did. They stopped right in front of our house. They had a small car, and it was full of Bibles. I mean, the trunk was full. They didn't even have a tire. They had no luggage. They had nothing. And it just Bibles. And the inside of the car was full of Bibles, just huge sacks of Bibles. How could they have driven across the border like that? Where did they come from? And how did they know who we were? And they didn't even check to see if it was the right house before they started unloading them. Yeah, it was just so much, and we couldn't talk to them. They didn't understand what we were saying, and we didn't understand them. So they dropped the Bibles off and left. But Pastor, do you know what the strangest thing about them was? They were just this tall. And you'd have to know us to appreciate that, because both my wife and I are barely 5 foot tall. And so today they have this strange story about angels that look more like hobbits, and they continue to tell this story. Well, the story went on in that we left that place and continued to deliver Bibles, and went to several other places, but we suddenly realized there was a real problem. We just could not give our Bibles away. We'd never had that problem before. Always people would say, oh, do you have more? Do you have more? And we would leave, just a pile of them in each place, or, some handfuls in each place. But this time, instead of all that they normally would ask for, all of them said, no, just give me a few. Just give me a few. Well, here we'd gone to all the places we were supposed to go to, and we still had half a truckload of Bibles. We thought, what's going on? And finally we understood, and were told the story that a week prior to this, there was a big raid all through the country, and the police had raided many of the homes of the people they knew that were involved in Bibles, and they raided their homes. They found a number of Bibles, confiscated them, arrested a number of people, and all of this took place just a week before we came with this huge load of Bibles. Well, we thought, what do we do now? We were at the end of our contacts of where we were supposed to go on that particular trip, and we still had a half a truck of Bibles. So we thought, well, what do we do? I mean, do we go back across the border and trust God's going to blind their eyes again, getting us back, smuggling back back to Holland? And we thought, no, we can't do that. Well, I had the thought, you know what? We still have this bicycle to deliver. I'll tell you what, you stay here at the campground where they were staying, and Carolyn and I will go and deliver this bicycle. And then in the meantime, we'll see what takes place and what we should do with these Bibles. So Carol and I drove to this town where they were supposed to take the bicycle to, and we're driving through the town. And again, a lot of the places kind of look the same. A lot of them have a kind of a big fence with a courtyard and gates in front. And there was one gate that was open, and a group of people standing there in front of it. And as we drove slowly by, they were waving for us to come in the gate. We thought, well, this is kind of strange, but and it was right where the house was supposed to be, pretty close to there. So we went ahead and drove through the gate. They closed it quickly, and they surrounded the car, and we got out of the car, and they hugged us and said, quickly, come, supper is ready. We thought, supper is ready? What do you mean? Well, we followed them into the house, and sure enough, they had this table all set, and beautifully set with lots of good food. Hungary is known for its good food. And so here we're sitting at the table, and 2 empty chairs. And we're looking at each other, very surprised. We said, well, how did you know we were coming. They said, well, we sat down to our meal, and we began to pray for the meal. And the Lord spoke to us and said, you have guests coming. Go and greet them at the gate. And so that's why we were standing there waiting for you. Well, we were shocked. How can this be? You know, but sure enough, they had these two chairs already set up for us. Well, we sat down and began to just share and talk, and they fortunately had a daughter that could translate for us, roughly, and so she was translating for her father, and her father, at one point, he asked actually her, so he asked them if they have brought any Bibles for us. And she turned to him and said, no, Papa, no, they brought us a bicycle. They have no Bibles. So we'll ask them if they'll stay and share at our meeting in our church. And so she asked, and we said, well, you know, we can't because we have people waiting for us. They'll be worried if we don't come back. But I said, you know what? I said, we will be back tomorrow. And then we can stay and share at your church as well. So we said goodbye to them and went back to be with our friends. And the next morning we took and drove again to that village, drove through the gate that was open. They quickly shut it, and then I was so excited because I reached into the vehicle there. I actually got in and started taking some of the Bibles out, and I started showing them to the pastor. I said, here, look what we have for you. And he was just surprised, and he just said, oh, wait. He said, I want to show you something. And so he took us around the house to the back of the house. There was a big barn. And he opened the doors to the barn and led us inside. And there on the floor of the barn are these big beams. And he says, here, help me. We took these big wooden beams off of this hole that they were covering and removed them. Then he put a ladder into this hole. And he said, come, follow me. And so we climbed the ladder into this hole. It was kind of like a pit where you drive a car over and repair the car, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But anyway, we climbed into it, and there inside he had this little doorway. And he opened that up and led us inside, and here was a room, underground room. And he said, you know, we have been praying for a long time for Bibles. And no one really knew about us here, but we have several churches that are under us here, and we've been praying, and so in our prayers, the Lord spoke to us and said, I'm going to send you many Bibles. And so I dug this big room. And you know, that day we filled that room with those Bibles. All because of an old Dutch bicycle. We are so thankful for that little Dutch missionary and the bicycle that seemed to be a burden, but really turned out to be a blessing.